I hope you recall, or if you're not, then we refreshed some part of this today. So this unit that we normally study is primarily done because at level 3, you are looking at developing skill to understand, how to do writing of assignments in particular. And sometimes when you, look at taking notes, for example, in the class, or when you're doing your sessions, the pilot session, your instructor is giving some notes and you make some notes on your notepad or in your, file, then there are certain bits, which are related to how you would look at capturing this information which is being shared by your tutor or your teacher. So in order to look at, sometimes gathering data, in order to look at collecting data, in order sometimes to look at, reading through an article and then summarizing it, in your own words, or reading a newsletter and then writing in your own words. Sometimes you write a formal letter. Sometimes you speak, with your colleagues or your friends. So all this involves, techniques of communication. But sometimes when we look at writing, specifically writing, we have to focus in this unit on understanding how do we develop writing skills. And writing skills are required, when you look at different types of documents. So you will look at reports which are written in a particular fashion. You look at assignment, which is written in a different, fashion. Sometimes you see articles, you read a newspaper article, you read, say, for example, an interesting article on a particular topic. They are written in a particular way. And when you look at newsletters, they are also written in a particular way. So if I just look at, showing you some examples, like examples of articles. So when I say example of articles, let's look at some images. So if we look at an article which has been written, this, for example, is an article, which summarizes some part of the information which the user is trying to get across to you. This is an example of an article, as you can see. Right? So this is an article which has some basic, presentation style. So it has, if you look at it carefully, when I look at presentation style, you will see that it has some headings. There are some bold letters or capital letters. There are some, the text in the article has been arranged in the form of, small paragraphs. There is a use of special character, which is called the caps, which is to, look at giving it a bit more, focus when they're starting off a paragraph. There's use of bullet points. So this is a presentational feature which is normally written or used when you write an article. Articles can be for different types. Articles can be for kids, for children, for professionals. When you write an article as a journalist, you're writing an article for the audience. So there are different types of articles. Now, if I look at article examples, say for example, example of articles or newspaper articles. So as you can see, this is a newspaper article. And this has been written in a particular way. So the presentational feature of this article that you see here, the way it has been written, is that it has a bit of a headline in cap letters. There is a picture which has been given to draw some attention. There is a headline which is given here, which is in capitals, and then the text is arranged neatly in paragraphs, as you can see. So this is a presentational feature when you write a newspaper article, because you will start off with some context or a scenario, and an actual article would look like, say, for example, something like this. So this is a newspaper article wherein it is a picture to draw the focus. It is written by an author. It is organized into, paragraphs, and there are some bullet points, as you can see, to, kind of summarize the important bits of information in the article. Now, let's look at examples of report. So when we look at examples of reports, do you know why reports are written? When do you write reports?
Yeah.
So if you're working in the company, and your manager asks you to write a report on this month's sales, for example. Can you summarize the sales or the activities that you've done in this month? He would ask you to write a business report, and that report, would be something like this. It has some heading, could say, summary report for the month of September, and then you use some paragraphs, some bullet points. As you can see, there is some example of colored fonts or use of color to break the text so that it becomes readable and it becomes easily understandable. So that there are different types of reports that you can write, right? You could, if you're studying in a school, your headmaster or your teacher would normally write a yearly school report in terms of how's your attendance, how's your progress. If you're working as a project manager, you would have a report that you produce for the team, and that could be a project, progress report. And that report could have various things in it, like, some charts, some graphs, depending on what kind of report you're producing. So this is a report which is a medical report. Sometimes when you go to the pathology lab, you get some tests done, like a blood test and other things. So they also produce a report. And this is also an example of a report wherein they put out some important bits of information which your GP will look at, and he would look at giving you some medicine or prescribing some medicine. This is another form of report, as you can see. And this report is presenting most of the information using graphs, charts, columns and rows. And this is like a report which is prepared for executive management, wherein they want to see, let's say the final, summary of what is presented in the report. It could be in the form of graphs, charts, pictures, diagrams, things like that. Can you think of places where you get a report, or have you ever, seen a report which you have got? And can you think of examples? Where do you think, in what situations reports are generated? So a simple example of report could be when you go out to do a shop, to a weekly shop, you get a receipt, a till receipt, and if you get a till receipt, that till receipt, will also be a bit of a report. This kind of a receipt. This is a report of the total purchases that you have made from the store. Can you see? So it has some items, some prices next to it. There's a total at the end, and you paid for it. So this is an example of a small report that you get from the superstore when you do the shopping, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
You give your car for servicing. For example, you give your car to service. You give your car service report. So you can get a car service report from your dealership when they look at servicing your car. They find certain faults. They change certain things. So what they produce is basically a car service report. A vehicle checkup report like this. So they also produce. They do a number of tests, which is to check the emissions, the tire tread, maybe the engine oil, the brake oil, and then they produce a report. And this is also a form of report. So reports are things, that we use generally on a day-to-day basis. And what you need to be able to understand in one of the, outcomes of this unit is that when you present information can be presented in different types of formats. One of the formats is article. Second format could be a report. Is that okay? And the third one that we look at, that we discussed, would be in terms of, looking at, say, for example, letters, right? So when you write an email, when you write a letter, there are different forms of letters. And this, is also a type of a report at the end of the day. So when you look at a letter, you write a covering letter when you submit your CV, if you're applying for a job. If you, for example, write a letter to your school, your college, your teacher, your instructor, you're writing different types of letters. And some of these letters are written in a particular format. So they could be a formal letter, it could be an informal letter. Suppose you're writing a letter to your friend, your father, somebody in your family. That could be an informal letter because you're using a language which is a bit more informal and more appropriate to day-to-day usage. But when you write a letter to your boss, your manager, or you're writing an official letter, then you follow a particular format. So again, this is a form of writing, and sometimes these can be considered as types of reports. So if I have to recollect, what type of written reports do you produce or you've come across, you'll be able to say that with confidence that I have read, say, for example, a newspaper article, I've read a letter, I've sent an email, I've looked at, say, for example, reports, and these are all different forms of written communication which you sometimes do when you are working within an organization, business, or job. Is that okay? Now, as a student, you are producing a different type of report to complete the unit, isn't it? And that kind of a report that you're producing or a document that you're producing would be called an assignment, because you're looking at producing a report which will help the teacher mark your work, and that work which is being produced for the teacher in terms of an assignment brief, related to an assignment brief, and that document that you produce is a document like a assignment. So this is a form of a document which generally is produced in cases when you're studying and you're producing an output which is addressing some tasks and criteria. This tends to be an assignment report. Is that okay? Yeah. Clear on that? Yeah. So this was what we discussed, in the first learning outcome. The first learning outcome was to understand why sometimes you need to learn academic writing. Why do you need to write formally? Because you need to write formally because you're looking at producing different forms of articles or reports. And these tend to be, articles or reports which could be of different types. And when I classify them from a point of view of different types, I can say that it's a report, it's an assignment, it's an article, it's a newspaper article, you have a formal letter, you could write an email, and these forms of communication, when you produce them in writing, can have both informal and formal, ways of writing them. So that is the reason why we want to look at learning and understanding why academic writing is required in certain situations. The other reason why we look at studying this particular unit is that we also need to learn how to research. How do we do research? How do you conduct research? How do you collect data? When you gather data or collect data, how do you use that data to churn it into information? And how do you churn or turn information into knowledge, which could be used by you for decision making? So research skills are important. So in this particular unit, which is academic and research skills for business, we need to be able to understand, these two important areas, which is one, academic writing, and the second is how to conduct research, why research is required, and when we collect data, gather data through research, how do we present this information in the form of a report or in the form of a suitable output which is required for the relevant audience. So if you do a bit of research, which is through questionnaire, collect some data, and you have to present it to your manager or your management to say that I've done a research in the market that, say, for example, the Samsung Galaxy S10 phone is selling better than iPhone. But how would you say that it is selling better than the iPhone? Because you have gone into the market, you've spoken to customers, you've asked about their opinions, what phone they have, you've collected and analyzed some sort of data. Now, when you have to present this to your audience in the organization, you would either create a presentation on PowerPoint to summarize the areas in terms of how you did research. So you formed some objectives, you formed a questionnaire, You went out and spoke to a few colleagues to find out which phone they are using. You asked them some questions related to the usability of the phone, the preference to the phone they have, and then once you collected all this raw data, you at one place analyzed it, or kind of put it together to come out with a meaningful output, and this meaningful output is then presented to your organization or your management in the form of, say, a PowerPoint presentation. So again, research is quite important, is because you need to understand why do you need to research, how do you collect data, and when you've collected data, how do you analyze it, and analyze it for meaningful purposes. And then once you analyze the data, how do you present it to the relevant audience in terms of ensuring that they find the information they are looking for, that you present that data to them. So it could be in the form of an article, a summary report, it could be an email that you send across, it could be something that you tabulate or create a PowerPoint presentation with. And this is what we looked at in the first learning outcome. Now, getting into details, why do we do research? What is primary research, secondary research? What are the different phases of doing research is something that we also discussed in detail. And wherein I took an example of, Boeing, for example, Boeing, for example, is under investigation because in the recent time, we took an example that there are two 737 MAX aircrafts which have crashed. One in the Far East, in I think Philippines and Malaysia, and the other one in eastern Somalia. And the reasons for crash are being investigated. So when you look at conducting an investigation, you are in a way trying to research or trying to find out reasons of why the aircraft actually failed under these conditions. And you want to come out with answers to the problem that why these aircrafts face that kind of condition and why it risks life. So when you look at some of these reasons, at some stage, some people, say in this case, the Boeing authorities, Boeing authorities and the FAA in the US started an investigation to research into issues and problems which the aircraft, flight system was having, which led to the crashes and the loss of life in this case. So when they look at exploration of finding the reasons and they probe into detail why this has happened, and they start asking questions, what they're in a way doing is doing research to gather information and data from passengers, from various airport authorities, from different types of people, which will help them analyze the problem and the issues which the aircraft actually faced, and because of which the crashes happened. So we looked at one quiz in particular, wherein I took you through what is primary research, secondary research, and tertiary research. So those are the bits that we covered in first learning outcome, and then we concluded with understanding why, when you look at gathering data and when you collect a lot of data from different sources, what you have to do at some stages reference it, because some part of it is being, created or authored by somebody else. So in order to give them, credence, that means in order to give them the appropriate, I would say in order to give them appropriate reasons to say that this is something which I'm utilizing in my piece of work, what you have to do is give them due reference, and that referencing that we use within the UK in most of the education system is called Harvard referencing. That means you're trying to give credit to the person or the author which has actually created or authored that information. And when you give due credit to that person, we are looking at following something called Harvard referencing. Harvard referencing is also, in other terms or words, is called the author date style referencing. That means you put the name of the author, the last name of the author first, and then put the date in which year or the month in which the information is actually produced or printed or published. And that tends to be the Harvard referencing system. So this was in general a background and an overview of what we intend to study in this unit, which is academic and research skills for business. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you want to say something?
No, okay, continue.
Now, in the first presentation that we looked at, in order to address this first learning outcome, assess your own academic competence, I think you must recall that we looked at understanding, different types of skills. The first learning outcome in this unit actually focuses on understanding and assessing what are your strengths and weaknesses. So before we get into assessing your strengths and weaknesses for English language and language skills, what we'll do is we'll cover some of the key terms and terminology which is related to things like what are skills, what are hard skills, what are soft skills, and that is what we want to understand in terms of key terms when we go into this unit. So, do you know or can you think of when we say what are skills? When you say, I have networking skills, I have leadership skills, what do you mean by skills? You know what is skills?
Yes,
What is the meaning of the word skill?
ability.
Ability, very good, yes. So when you say that I have certain skills, that means you have ability to be able to do something well. And over the years, you would have developed some sort of an expertise, and that is why you say that this is a skill I have. So when we look at skills can be classified into two types, hard skills and soft skills. The hard skills are skills that you can teach, and they are something which can be quantified. That means this is something that you can learn through, by studying in a class, by reading a book, or by getting into trainings. So anything which you gain or can learn through training, reading, or some sort of, I would say, in general training, then these skills will be classed as hard skills. An example that we took here was that if I have to learn a new language, say for example, you're learning French, if you take French classes or if you learn and go and enroll yourself into a French class and a French tutor or a teacher is teaching you, then over a point in time, you will be able to develop this language skill and you'll be able to start to speak French. And that is why this is called a hard skill, because this is something that you can learn, inherit, or gain by doing some training. Now, what are soft skills? Soft skills are a combination of skills that people will generally, achieve through their own experience. So in this case, these skills could be skills which people normally would, either inherit or they would primarily, look at observing and learning, and that would be classed as what is called, soft skills. Is that okay?
Yes.
Can you give an example of soft skills? Any example of soft skill?
Communication.
Yes, communication, yes. So when you say soft skills, any idea in terms of, how would people, look at getting these skills? So soft skills are skills that you show or you exhibit because of your personality, because of your character, your upbringing. So some of the things, for example, sometimes you get to hear when people talk about that he's very polite or she's very courteous, is because these are things which are a part of your personality and your grooming. So some way, somehow down the line, when you pick up some of these skills of being courteous, polite, obedient, when you say that this person is very obedient, is very loyal. Now, these skills are skills which are defined by the character or the personality of an individual. and generally they tend to be skills which people are able to develop when they work or basically are in a particular environment. So if you sometimes parents would normally scold their children. They'll say, okay, don't go into that company, he's not, is because they feel that the child will pick up bad manners or bad language if he goes into that company. So skills that you can acquire because of the environment that you work in, or because of your personality and the attributes and your characters that you show, are skills which could be classed as soft skills. So skills like communication, it could also include other skills which could be a combination of social skills, for example. It could be skills which are related to your intelligence. For example, if you are in a good company, then obviously if you are working towards a particular goal, some of these skills that you acquire could also be because of your intelligence. Is that okay?
Yes.
Now, having understood that, we could look at one or two videos on YouTube with regards to these skills. But at this stage, when we go into understanding this particular unit and the first learning outcome, what it is asking us to do is identify our strengths and weaknesses in relation to English as a language. So what we want to do is, we don't want to learn what are the skills, or what are the hard skills, soft skills. But with that understanding, what the activity is asking us to do is primarily look at the strengths and weaknesses, but mainly in the area of English language skills. So for this, if you recall, I asked you to do a test, which is a test for English as a second language, and the idea was to take this free test, which is on the British Council website. It has got about, I think, 25 questions. It should take not more than 10 minutes to do, and when you take this test, it will give you a result to show what is your level of English. And this is what you need to put as a screenshot in the first task, which is assess your own academic weaknesses, strengths and weaknesses in English language skills. Is that okay? So did you take this test? Any idea, Insan, did you take this test?
Send it to the others.
So what I've done is I've sent you the link of this on WhatsApp. So my suggestion would be that you should look at taking this particular
Okay.
test, this test on WhatsApp. I've sent you to.
Please send it to email, please.
Okay, I've sent. I don't know whether you recall, but this is also on your email. So I'll send it to you again, but this is definitely on your email. And what you need to do is, when you take this particular test, my suggestion would be to look at, if you recall this email which was sent to you on the 21st of August. You see this email? So on this, there is a test link which I've given, and then obviously the presentation, all the other bits were also included. So this unit, technically speaking, we are doing a bit of a catch up with you, but this unit we have already covered, if you see. So on 21st, we did the first learning outcome. Then on the 28th of August, we did the second learning outcome. And then I asked you to look at, the third learning outcome, which was done on the 28th of August, for which I sent you the recording as well. So I think you've forgotten maybe, but you've not, revised some of this bit. So let's do that very quickly, now, rather than, so this was, as you can see, third learning outcome recording, which I had sent to you. And this is also being, discussed and sent on the email. that okay? So let's go back
Okay.
to this particular discussion that we're doing. So the first task here is to look at your strengths and weaknesses. And how would you get your strengths and weaknesses? You will be able to get your strengths and weaknesses by actually taking this English test, because they don't look at our strengths and weaknesses. Generically, we need to look at strengths and weaknesses for English language skills. And that is what you need to do this test for. Is that okay? Yeah?
Okay. Yes.
And then once you've done this, what you have to do is take a screenshot. So when I start the test, as you can see, I will fill this up by answering the questions. But towards the end, what I will do is I will get a result. So at the end of the test, for example, if I look at just answering a few questions just randomly, as you can see, it tells me that my English is a beginner to elementary, right? So this screenshot is what you have to take. You have to
Yes.
note.
Okay. Where should I send the screenshot? Okay.
This screenshot will be put into your assignment, because this, when you take a photo of this, you will put this in your assignment, because it will depict what is called your strengths and weaknesses in English language skills. Okay?
Okay.
So at the end of the day, yeah, task 1. Task 1. So when you get your result, that result is going to tell you, if I just look at my result now in a bit more detail, that result is going to tell me, just as an example, that my strengths are, then you have to write your strengths here. What are your strengths? Your strengths are, you would put your personal strengths, things which you think are your areas in which you're good. So it could be that you're good in, for example, mathematics. You could be good in, say, for example, reading. Good in terms of, say, building relationships. You could be good in terms of, writing or understanding things quite quickly. You could have very good logic, which you think is a strength area for you. So you have to put your strengths in this column. Okay? Here you have to put your strengths. Here you have to put your weaknesses. What are your weak areas? So weak areas could be that you want to improve your English language skills. But in English language, what do you want to improve? Comprehension, reading, speaking, or writing? You have to mention your specific weakness, but specific weakness within English. Okay? Now, in English, it could be that I want to improve my English, but that is a very generic statement. It's a general statement. In English, you have to specify that I want to improve my, say, if you say writing, but writing skills, from what level to what level. So when you say writing is also generic. I want to increase writing from entry level 3, say, to entry to level 2. Then I can understand that you're telling me that you want to improve writing skills, wherein in writing you could have further things like I want to improve my grammar, I want to improve my, say, punctuation, I want to improve, for example, use of tenses, adjectives and tenses and verbs. So lots of things can be written. So here you have to be specific in terms of what you want to improve within, and that is your weakness that you think. And then you have to write some opportunities. What are the opportunities if you improve your English, or if you improve or better your reading skills? What kind of opportunities would it provide? And then if you do not improve, for example, if you do not improve your English, or if you do not improve, say, for example, your writing skills, then what are the threats you face because of not improving certain skills is what you have to define in, the threat areas. So this is a small template that you can use, wherein you basically try and list out your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threat, but only related to your English language skills. Is that okay?
Okay.
Now, after this, in the second task, see, this is a practical unit. There is not much theory, but in the second task, once you know that I have my weaknesses and these are my threats, then what you have to do is you have to create some sort of targets for improvement. And how would you set targets for improvement? Use something called SMART targets. Now, SMART is an acronym which is a word which means, S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A is achievable, R is realistic, and T is time bound. So this is an acronym which is generally used to set targets which can be specific, which can be measured, they can be achievable. So you don't want to set a target which you want to say that my English is the entry level 3, for example, or let's take a different example altogether. Say, for example, you're able to run 100 meters and you run 100 meters in, say, 15 or 16 seconds. Now, if you want to improve your timings for running 100-meter race from 16 seconds to 12 seconds, that might not be achievable. It might be a very unrealistic target, because that would require number of hours of working with coaches, professional equipment, lots of variables, lot of factors would be playing into to reduce that 4 seconds that you're trying to shave off in terms of running time. So sometimes when you look at putting targets, you would say that, okay, today I run 100 meters in about 16 seconds, but with 2 or 3 months of training, I would like to reduce this time to, say, 13 seconds or 14 seconds. Then slowly you will again put some target and you will say, I can bring it down to, 14 seconds, then 13 seconds. And over a year of practice, exercise, and, coaching, you will be able to bring it down to 12 seconds, which is your target. So sometimes when you set a target, your target has to be achievable and realistic. If your sales manager says that we want to achieve 1 million pounds of sales this month, but if I ask him what was the previous sales, he will say, okay, last month we achieved 100,000. So how can you go from 100,000 to 1 million in 1 month? This target, is going to be not achievable. Everybody will get demotivated. So sometimes when you look at setting goals or objectives for yourself, what you have to look at using the word or the acronym called SMART. And in this case, what we have to do is set targets which are specific, which are achievable and measurable. And then why do you say realistic? Because if sometimes you find that no, this target is not achievable, then what will happen is, if the manager still insists that you need to go and get this much sales, what will happen is it will lead to demotivation of staff. Staff will feel, no, this is not achievable. The company's gone, bonkers or mad, and the person is not keeping track of what is happening in the market, and this target is unrealistic, and that will lead to demotivation, staff losing its morale, and sometimes it might also mean that the company and the staff end up leaving the company. They say, okay, the boss is too aggressive, or my manager keeps very aggressive target which we cannot achieve, and as a result it's putting a lot of pressure on me. So targets have to be realistic. And why they have to be time bound? Can you think of any reason why they have to be time bound? Why do you think targets can have to be time bound? It has to be time bound because you will see that in some cases, if you look at monthly sales, at the end of the month, the manager has to pay salaries, or has to pay wages for workers, so they have to bring in some finite revenue. That means that there has to be some sales generated in the company. So that is why sometimes target have to be time bound. You say that I want to learn French, example. You want to learn a new language, but you will set a target for yourself, isn't it? I would like to speak French in 2 years, or 2 to 3 years. Why you put a target like that is because at some stage you want to say that I have learned French and I can speak French. So sometimes you have to define a timeline to ensure that you are able to follow that and then try and achieve it within that timeline which has been set. And that is why targets have to be, smart targets. I've given an example of smart targets here. So each of these, are defined. And then an example I've filled here, which is to say, how would you set smart targets for yourself? And that is the second task. It says, set targets for improvement using self-assessment. So in the case of English test that you've done, and you've looked at your, results, how would you improve your English? You have to put smart targets to it. So when you put smart targets, this is how you will look at, defining specific targets which are measurable, attainable, achievable, relevant, and obviously time bound. So you have to fill them up, and that will become your task 1.2. Okay? Is that okay? And then the last task here talks about, develop a plan to show how you will achieve the target. So here we discussed something called personal development plan. So when you have to look at achieving your target, you have to set some sort of a plan in place. And that plan is called the personal development plan. So you have to create a personal development plan which will essentially define how you will go after achieving your targets. So one of your targets is that you want to complete level 3 diploma, isn't it? So how would you complete level 3 diploma? You have to study for it. You have to study each of the individual units. You have to complete the assignments. Once the assignments are completed, you are able to, get marks for it. And once, one by one, all the 4 units have been completed, then you would have completed the qualification. So in this case, what do you have to do? When I have to look at a personal development plan, the plan would be, first thing would be, if I have to achieve this qualification, I have to enroll and register for this qualification with the college. Now, when I start studying, I study the units, I study the content, and I look at, writing the assignments. So the second step would be to, after registration and enrollment, you would like to study the units. So one by one, you study the units, and that is a goal. Now, after you've started to study the unit, the end objective is complete the assignment or the assessment so that you are able to score and know that you passed that unit. And then the third step would be to look at writing the assignment and then submitting the assignment for assessment. And once you get the result, you would know whether you passed this unit or not passed this unit. And then at some stage, this will happen for 1 unit, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4, when all the 4 units of the qualification have been attempted, assessed, and you've got a grade for it. At some stage, it will lead to certification. And you put a timeline next to it. So 1 unit, I would, in order to study this unit, I would do some self-study every day for 1 to 2 hours. I will look at the teaching and learning material which is given on Moodle. I will attend the online sessions which are happening. And these are steps that you are taking to try and achieve and complete your qualification. Or this is your plan. And this plan that you put it into a table wherein you can monitor it, review it, and put a timeline to it is called the personal development plan. Is that okay?
Okay.
This is something that we covered, in the first learning outcome, which was done, on the 21st of August. So my suggestion would be, if you look through your emails and just complete and revise some of this stuff, which is learning outcome 1, learning outcome 2 is what we also studied, and then 3, and we were about to start learning outcome 4. So we have covered learning outcome 1, 2, and 3. So my suggestion would be to go back and revise this, and then send me, this particular document which I have, which I've sent you on the email, as you can see. this one. So I told you that what you need to do is you need to make a PDP. I told you make sure that you take a screenshot of the test in terms of the results. You make a PDP, you do your SWOT analysis and develop a SMART target. So all these documents I have sent you as templates, as you can see.
Okay.
Have you got this on your email or not?
Wait.
Yes. This is your email, isn't it? Correct? So this is what I've already sent you on the email. Have you got this with you on your email or not?
Wait, 7 hours.
Is this your email or not?
I'm checking now.
Okay, checking. So I can send this to you again if you are not able to find it.
Okay. Please send it. Okay. I've sent it now. So I'm going to send you all these, again, Yitzhak. Learning outcome 2 also, I've sent it now. And then I'm sending you learning outcome 3 also. So we have covered, all these learning outcomes which I want you to study and then, come back. Because here what you need to be able to do now is basically just submit your assignment as per the templates. So this unit is going to be more or less complete, but we have covered learning outcome. So what we have covered so far before you went on holiday, 1, 2, 3. This is what we have covered already, 1, 2, and 3. So we have to start from 4, 5, and 6. This is what we have to study now, 4, 5, and 6. Okay.
Okay. So I have sent you this now. Tomorrow also we have a session, and in tomorrow's session, I don't know whether you recall, we also started this other unit, which is, unit 3.26, which is communication unit. And in this also, we've done the first learning outcome 3, wherein it talks about, 3 different types of documents or articles you need to produce. So one I said was look at an email, second, copy of your CV, and third, draft a letter of complaint. So I've sent you this handout which talks about different types of written communication and the letter of complaint. So there is a sample which is given here, and looking at this sample, you have to write a letter of complaint here. And that will cover your task 3 in the new unit, which is communication skills for business.
Yes, I know. I am doing it.
So my suggestion is for tomorrow, I'm going to start with learning outcome 4. So please revise today 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Okay?
Okay.
No worries. Any questions at your end?
I am continuing the I had to finish it 3
previously how we separate all the what task until task 5 I did. Can you say, can you teach the where should I send the assignment?
This-
Okay.
So 3.23, you have sent me task 2, which is fine, which is a pass.
Yes, I
This is a
need
pass.
3, 4, and 5.
Okay, you send me 3, 4, and 5. So task 2 is fine. I've looked at that, and I've also looked at your task 1, which you had sent on the PowerPoint presentation. So this was also okay. This was fine. This one is fine, and the task 1. So task 1, you've completed already.
Yes.
3,
4,
you
5.
have task 2 also. You sent balance task now. So task 2 is also done. So you need to send me 3, 4, and 5. I think there are 6 tasks in that. So you have to see task 3, 4, 5, 6 now.
5, 6, 4. 3, 4, 5, 6 will go before start tomorrow classes.
So you've got this, look, you've got 3, you've got 4, 5, and 6. So let's complete this as quickly as possible.
Yes, it will go before start tomorrow to class.
Okay, that's fine.
But I want to know the email where should I send? I think
You should send it to usual email that you send it to always, and that email, is learner work. This is the email that you send your work.
no.
So I've WhatsApped you as well. You previously sent this to us on this email only. So as you can see, your previous email which you sent is to learner work. Before that also is to learner work.
Okay, I get it.
Okay?
Okay,
Okay, no worries. I'll see you tomorrow then.
see you tomorrow.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye for now.